Goodridge, founder of Art Impact International. And we are here today with our solo exhibition artist, Noah Hartley. And he is going to give us a tour of his exhibition, of the drawings and paintings. Now, Noah, can you tell us about yourself? Can you tell us your background, what you're doing now, and then we'll get into the show.
Absolutely. So I am a conservation artist from Charlotte, North Carolina. I graduated 2 years ago from UNC Charlotte with a degree in illustration. And that was when I started to really understand what I kind of wanted to do with my body of work. And I kind of fell in love with just painting and drawing animals. I've always loved animals. I even went to UNC Charlotte, originally a biology major, but I very quickly figured out that my path was going to be a little different, and I wanted to use more of the artistic side of my passion to create work about animals. And then as I was trying to figure out exactly what kind of artwork I wanted to create, I really found myself delving deep into looking at statistics about endangered animals and how much our climate and our environment is suffering just because of humans' sort of complacency. You know, a lot of the things we do, we don't even really realize that we're doing things that are impacting the environment in such a negative way. And I think for me, it's so nice to be able to create work that, you know, looks very colorful and visually pleasing, but also has a little bit of that deeper meaning behind it too. And it's nice to just be able to paint animals because there's so much variety. And, you know, one day maybe I want to paint a reptile and the next day I want to paint a panda. So that's really where I'm at right now. I've always loved painting animals. I'm getting a little bit further away from it. Just recently I started getting into portraits of some famous artists, but animals are something that I'm always going to gravitate back towards. And I definitely have a few pieces on the easel right now of animals that I need to finish. So.
Wow. Noah, can you tell us about your new post in your work? What are you doing new now for the first time?
Well, I had a job for the past 3 years. I recently got a different job, but I had a job where they had asked me to give a demo doing palette knife portraits. So you know, you're painting with the palette knife and you're painting a portrait of a person, which is way out of my wheelhouse. You know, as you'll see in the artwork that we're about to go through, it's completely different from it. But I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do it. So I did a couple examples of some musicians, and a lot of people on my social media liked it and they commissioned me to keep doing it. And so I kept doing it. And since then I've had the opportunity to do about 5 or 6 different palette knife portraits for people. I actually just finished a portrait of Frida Kahlo for a very nice guy that I met. He actually had bought a previous painting and put it up for auction to go to an African-American organization, like sort of a cultural support organization in Charlotte. And then he commissioned me to do the Frida Kahlo piece. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, but I don't think I'm going to be doing it for much longer. I want to get back into painting animals. I really feel like that's my calling. So.
Okay. All right, so let's start, because I believe you have over 25 pieces in this show. So let's start on, and does any one of the attendees have any questions at this point for Noah before we get started?
Not yet.
Okay, great. So let's start with the giraffe here, Nubian giraffe.
Yes, exactly. So
wow.
This is actually a subspecies of giraffe that's endangered, and obviously in Africa. And this was the largest acrylic paint pour I've done. So this is a process that I would like to say that I made up this specific way of doing it. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say that because I'm sure there's artists all around the world that are doing it. But I don't know if you're familiar with an acrylic paint pour. It's very popular right now. Where basically you mix together different colors and there's a lot of ways to put it on the canvas, but it creates these really cool designs that you don't have much control over. And I'm a very controlled artist. I like to be able to control where my paint is going. So what I kind of experimented with and figured out is if I could draw my image and then I could use hot glue lines from a hot glue gun to go over those lines, it created barriers. And so I could still do these abstract paint pours where these colors were just going wild, but I could also keep, you know, the blues and the greens where I wanted the blues and the greens to be, and the browns to be where I wanted the browns to be, because there were hot glue lines that were kind of creating those barriers. And then after I have the initial paint down, I just come in with a white, like thinned out kind of transparent paint to add in highlights, and then a dark color to add in shadows. And this was, I had so much fun. I've always loved painting giraffes. They have so much personality to them. And I knew as soon as I got that canvas that I wanted to do a giraffe. I just had to find the time. So.
Wow, interesting, very interesting. So, all right.
Do you paint the background first and then the giraffe?
So at first I didn't, and I don't think I did on this giraffe. But I did learn that with acrylic paint pours, just recently I learned it does help if you put down a coat of white paint, and while it's still wet, that allows the paint to spread. Normally, when I paint traditionally, I try to get the background in before the subject, just so I'm not having to paint around my subject matter. With an acrylic paint pour, it's a lot different. I'm not even using a brush. I didn't use a brush to do any of this, with the exception.
What is an acrylic paint board?
So what you do is you see those crazy designs on the background, like the blues and purples. So what I did is I had, let's say there's 5 colors down there. I think it was 5. I had 5 cups, and one cup was blue, one was green, purple, so on and so forth. And you pour in paint thinner, or I shouldn't say paint thinner, like a painting medium. I use something called Floetrol. And you mix them all around, and then you pour them in a cup, and you just flip the cup over on the canvas. And the reaction from the paint, as it spreads out, causes these designs that are very well out of my control. You know, I didn't do any of those designs on the background. And that's part of the reason I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with acrylic paint pours, because the final result is so pretty, but the process is so opposite of what I've always done. You know, I've always wanted to control each brushstroke and know where it was going. And this was good for me to break away from that and not be able to control it, and it kind of forced me to be abstract in some regard, or I should say non-representational in some regard. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but basically you're just pouring paint in a cup and flipping it over on the canvas. I mean, that's the simple way to put it.
It's interesting the way you mounted it. It sort of looks like part of South Africa from the air.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I never even thought about that.
Wow. Thank you. All right. So Lion of Judah.
Yes, this is definitely one of my favorite pieces. A little background on this. I don't know how many triangles I put in this show. This might be the only one. But for my senior year at UNC Charlotte, I did an independent study. And I decided that I wanted to make my own panels because there was a wood shop, and I was taking a wood shop class, and I was kind of inspired. And so I spent a lot of time in that class making these triangles, which took so much work. And I had a senior show where I wanted to do endangered animals. And at that time in my life, I still loved painting, but I just didn't know the techniques like I should have. And so originally on this triangle, there's actually a sea turtle underneath all that paint where the lion and the lamb is. But I just spent so much time making the panel, and I was so unhappy with the way the turtle turned out that I just painted over it. And all of the triangles in that original series were pointing down, like the population of the animals. That was the idea, is there's sort of this decrease. And then I just had the thought, I would love to flip it around and go up. And I come from a very Christian background. And so for me, as soon as I decided to flip that up there, I saw this triangle and the Trinity. And I kind of already knew in my head that I wanted to do a lion and a lamb to depict that sort of biblical meaning behind it. And also, I just love painting big cats. So
Great. Excellent.
A lot of fun with that piece.
Yeah, this piece is I could see the crucifixion in the background. Yeah, very good. And it's not like over the top. It's very gentle. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the lamb kind of balanced that fierce lion out. So.
Yeah. But even the lion looks compassionate.
Yeah, definitely.
I
spent a very long time looking for photo reference of lions that, you know, I didn't want him to be ferocious. I want him to have that sort of wisdom about him.
Right, right. Well, that comes across for sure.
I took a great photo of 2 lions when I was in South Africa.
Really?
If I could find that, I should send it to you.
Yes, please do. Please do. I'm jealous you got to go to South Africa and photograph lions. That's like a dream for me.
Oh, I loved the lions and the elephants.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow. How about blue iguana?
Iguana. This is actually this might be my favorite painting, even though it's so small. And I feel like as an artist, you know, you have pieces where you can spend hours and hours on something, and a lot of times for me, it just doesn't look good. I'm just not happy with the result. And then sometimes it's almost like you have no control over it. You have a moment where you paint something quickly and just something happened in the process and it turned out, you know, the way you wanted it to. And this was one of those pieces where I had a day where I just had 5 or 6 of these small canvases. Yeah, they were 5 by 7. I have it down there. And I just tried to paint them all in that day. And one was an iguana, one was a giraffe. I think there was a rhino. And I ended up just really enjoying this iguana. I think I got kind of lucky, honestly, because I wasn't thinking too much about it. I wish I could say I planned out these colors to pop like they did, but I really didn't. I was just trying to practice. And since then, I've used this piece on my business cards. I've made stickers of it. And I actually had the opportunity to, I sold it to one of my old professors at UNC Charlotte. Actually, the first art professor I ever had before I was ever in the art program. I took an art appreciation class while I was still a biology major. And she was a big part of the reason why I decided to pursue art. And then years later, I ended up working in the same building as her, and we had a show, and she saw it and she bought it. So for me, this piece just has a lot of significance to me, kind of how it cycled through.
Nice, nice. Now, is the blue iguana, what is its native country?
So there are all sorts of iguanas that are all around the world. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm not entirely sure where a blue iguana is from. Okay. I know that one endangered species of iguana is the Galapagos. It's actually called a marine iguana.
Okay.
And it's all around the Galapagos Islands. And I know those are suffering. And I'm trying to remember, as you say that, as you were starting to ask that question, I was thinking in my head, man, I honestly don't know.
Wow.
But I think iguanas are such a cool species because there's such a wide variety of them, and you have areas in like the Galapagos where the species are suffering, but then you also have areas like in Florida where there's so many iguanas that they actually have to have legal yearly hunts to kind of take them out, which is kind of morbid, but you know, they're almost overpopulated.
Let's take a quick look. Cayman Island.
That's where Google says, yeah, Cayman Islands. I just saw that.
Yeah.
There's a blue iguana restaurant in Fairfax.
Really?
Look at them. Look at them. Cayman Islands.
Yeah, and you might actually see the photo that I chose. I made changes to it.
Right, right.
To avoid, you know, the whole copyright issues. I think I flipped it around and I added more frills on his back.
Right.
It was definitely a specific. I remember Googling blue iguana, and I didn't have to scroll that far down to find a photo that I, you know, was kind of inspired by.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very cool animals. And I definitely changed up the color scheme a little bit. I wanted to make it a little brighter.
Sure. This one feels like, let's see. Let's see if I can find your, oops, sorry. Let me close out these. I'm trying to get back to your see, that's what I get for having all these windows open.
The price of the multiple tabs.
Yeah, let me close them out. See if this is it. No.
I think it's the one to the right of the, yeah, right there.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. So we've got that one and that one. No, it's okay. I like yours. Definitely. Wow. But it is, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Anybody have any questions about the blue iguana? Okay, so we're going to jump to this wall and then we'll come back. Trash panda.
Little trash panda. So this is a photo that my uncle took. He lives in Virginia, and in his backyard, he has so much wildlife. They actually feed deer. So every evening they'll have like a dozen deer in their backyard, and bunnies. They've had black bears back there, and they have raccoons as well. But my uncle took this photo of the raccoon, and I knew I had to paint it as soon as I looked at it.
Oh.
And I've always loved raccoons. They are by no means endangered. They are the exact opposite.
Okay.
But they're such cool animals. I hate that with how prevalent they are. I think a lot of times they're looked at as a nuisance.
Right.
But they're very intelligent animals. And I think, honestly, I can't help but think they're kind of cute. So,
Right.
I had to paint the raccoon. Yeah.
So,
And that's one thing about, and I like to tell people this, is that I don't just paint endangered animals.
okay.
My big pieces are the endangered animals because I want, my focus to be on that. But at the end of the day, I just want to always be painting animals. And there's some pieces like this where I just want to get practice in.
Right.
And I think it's important to appreciate all kinds of animals, regardless of how their population is doing. So.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. Thank you, Noah. Very beautiful. I love how just naturally the colors work, how you framed what you were going to recreate in this painting. I'm sure there was more stuff, but just how you did that. Very nice.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, I tried to make him look a little fatter in the painting too, because I make him look a little cuter.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. It just looks very natural and not overdone.
Thank you.
And these are all oil, which is great. Yeah.
So this is another one of those paint pours, just like the giraffe. So again, I drew out my image. I went over the lines with hot glue, and then I selected different areas and I did those paint pours in those areas. So this was actually one of the first paint pours I ever did. And I think it ended up being very successful and kind of how I wanted it. But yeah, and I think pandas, you'll see multiple pandas throughout this exhibit. And part of the reason I love pandas is because when you think of endangered animals and when you think of conservation, there's always this negative image, this idea of, oh, we're hurting all these animals. And pandas are almost this glimpse of hope. Whereas if you look over the past 20 years, they've actually been lifted out of being endangered because humans kind of realized, okay, we're not going to have pandas if we don't wake up. And they started, especially the Chinese government, even though I think they might have been the problem in the beginning, they've started to really solve that problem. And now the panda population is the best it's been in over 2 decades. So it's cool to see, not all rare animals are dying out. There are species that humans are starting to realize that we need to really conserve, how we're handling their habitat and kind of bring the population back up. And the panda is one of those animals.
So was the panda initially in danger because their habitat was being cut down and
loss of habitat? If I remember correctly, loss of habitat was the main reason. Poaching might have also been an issue, but I don't remember if poaching was an issue. I might just be saying that because poaching is an issue for so many other animals. But I know that loss of habitat is a really big issue. And there's a term that I learned when I was researching my first series of endangered animals. It's called fragmentation, where the entire land might not be taken over by urban habitat, but it's split by something like roads or whatever. Some sort of man-made construction splits up these land masses, and that no longer allows populations to be together and to kind of diversify the gene pool, I guess, which ends up being a bad thing for a species. So I think fragmentation might have also been a problem for pandas.
Okay. What does the panda contribute to the environment?
I honestly don't know the specifics. I can only imagine, though, that they contribute in a very large way to taking down, I'm trying to remember if it was bamboo they eat or if it's eucalyptus. I think eucalyptus is a koala, but I'm pretty sure they eat bamboo. I do not know this, but if I had to guess, it would be some sort of flora management, I guess, kind of prohibiting that from growing any further. But even though I don't know the specifics of it, I can only imagine that there is a large impact, because it seems like anytime you take one species out of an ecosystem, all the other species eventually do get negatively impacted most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. But that's a good question. I probably should know the answer to that, but I don't.
Let's see. It says, what do pandas contribute to ecosystem? Let's see. They keep their mountain forests healthy by spreading seeds in their droppings, which helps vegetation to thrive. So you were on point, Noah, when you thought it had to do with the environment, definitely. So the forest environment, for blah blah blah, for food income. So they help keep the forest going, and the people need the forest, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, so good. So we all learn. So these questions are wonderful, and I love Google because it's not so difficult to find out those questions, those answers. Okay, Toronto Raptors, sorry.
Yeah, so I had a lot of fun working on this piece. When I was a child, I thought I wanted to be a paleontologist, so dinosaurs are definitely a big part of my childhood. And obviously this isn't necessarily an endangered animal, it's an extinct animal. Right. Not really much we can do. But I was going through a process, or I should say a period in my body of work where I was painting animals that were mascots. And so it started when I was painting some rams that the same uncle took a photo of, that took a photo of the raccoon. He had this really nice photo of some rams, and I was painting them, and I had someone reach out to me and say, you should add some tar heel blue to that because that's their mascot, and I'm from that state. And so I did that, and that ended up in a whole spiraling of events where I ended up doing a NC State Wolf. I did some Hornets for the Charlotte Hornets, and a whole lot of other teams I did mascot paintings for. And the Toronto Raptors had won the title that year. And like I said, I've always loved dinosaurs, and I kind of knew that I really wanted to paint some velociraptors in Toronto Raptors colors. So
wow.
That's where this came from.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Very, very well done. Wow. Your detail is just exquisite.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's my favorite part. I tell people all the time, if you ask me to do something simple, I can't do it.
Right.
It's gotta be detailed.
Right. Well, that's a part of illustration. You know,
Yes,
that's a part
absolutely.
of illustration.
What we got next?
I have to admit, this one's my favorite because it's so joyful to me.
Secretary Bird. I absolutely love this piece. I had a lot of fun working on it. This was actually for work. I was in a training session, and they wanted to find kind of really exotic photos and get the instructors to paint them as examples for the students. And I saw this bird, and I'd never even heard of it. And it's such a crazy bird. I mean, you can tell just by its face and the feathers that are behind it. But also, if you look at the full body of a secretary bird, it's got these really long legs, and it walks around, and it like literally stomps on its prey to try and kill it, to eat it.
What?
Which is but it's pretty cool. They're a very, very cool bird.
I did that one.
But they're very beautiful. And I don't know if they're endangered. I think they're considered vulnerable, which means they're close to being endangered if the proper steps aren't taken.
My goodness. Yes, we see. Wow.
Very, very cool.
Wow, look at that.
I love the color of its beak.
Yeah. You're right. Look at the legs are long.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and unique looking bird.
Wow, look at this one. The eyelashes is very feminine. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's got such a vibrant orange and that like transition to yellow.
What now? This is South African. Okay. in South Africa. That's what this one says anyway. That might not be its homeland, but interesting.
Thank you. And I noticed that since he was all white, I kind of wanted to do a colorful background. So that's why I chose primary color transition.
You did a really good job with the white.
Yes.
Thank you. I was working on those feathers, and I actually had, at the time, I was just an assistant instructor. And one of the lead instructors came over, and he kind of explained to me that I didn't need to be using pure white. I needed to be dulling one side down with sort of a bluish color and one side down with a more of a yellowish white, because there was that transition in the photo. And when he showed me how to do that, that made everything better, because it really helps to add volume to the bird's head. You know, obviously you have white feathers, but they're really not pure white. Light does still affect those white feathers in different ways. So.
Right. Beautiful. And I love that, like you said, you did a colorful transition, primary color in the background, blue, red, and yellow.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun too.
But it's completely balanced, you know, that type of red, that type of yellow, that type of blue, because there's like thousands of blues you could have used, you know. So beautiful. And this one now, the black cockatoo.
Black cockatoo. I thought this bird was absolutely beautiful. I love the yellow spots on it. This is one piece in a large series of work that I did that was sort of mixed media. It was watercolor and pen and ink. So I would draw my image, and then I would do one wash over the whole drawing. And I don't think I did it on this one, but on a lot of them I added salt. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen what like table salt does on top of wet watercolor, but it creates these explosions and really cool textures. And then from that design, I kind of build back up, jumping back and forth between pen and ink and watercolor to create the actual animal. And it's almost like the acrylic paint pour, where it gives me that abstract essence where I'm not very good at on my own. It forces me to work from abstract to make something look representational, which I really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
And what I loved about this photo was that really stark black. You know, the shadows were pitch black, which a lot of times in college when I was being taught how to paint, I was told to never use black, because a lot of times there very rarely is actually like a pitch black in whatever you're painting. And I think this is one of those rare examples where if you look at the photo, there really was pitch black areas. So that was fun for me to.
Wow, beautiful.
This animal, if I'm thinking correctly, is not endangered. I think this is actually an animal of least concern. But it was so pretty, I couldn't pass it up.
Cockatoos talk, don't they?
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do. They're definitely one of those intelligent birds. And this piece right here was the Charlotte Hornets piece that I was talking about. I never painted any sort of bee or hornet. I don't even know if I've painted many insects at all. But when I had the idea of doing these mascots, I knew I had to do the Charlotte mascot. It wasn't too long ago that Charlotte's franchise changed back to the Hornets, and there's such a popular market for the Charlotte Hornets. A lot of people like that vintage throwback mascot. And so I knew I wanted to paint the Hornets, and kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen the Charlotte mascot's logo, but it's a lot of teal and kind of a navy purple sort of color. And so I wanted to find a way to integrate those blues and those teals in the actual animals. And I think even though it's not a perfect example of complementary colors, the yellow really pops off that blue really well, because there is a little bit of purple in there. It kind of matches that yellow really well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You definitely have a true deep understanding of color. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to chime in or ask questions or comment or anything?
Is that an action? Is that a hornet? I can't figure out what, is that a picture of a hornet?
Yeah, there's 3 hornets in it. So there's one full hornet, and then the one on the bottom is looking straight at you, like it's almost hanging down. And then in the top right corner, you can just see the back of one.
And then what are those round things?
the hornet's nest.
Ah, okay, I see now. I see.
Octagonal. They have a very interesting looking nest. I actually hated painting that nest. I loved painting the hornets.
I always avoid hornets, so I've never been that close to their nest.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they're able to build those nests in an astonishingly quick amount of time.
It's almost like a beehive.
Yeah, it's really cool. I don't like being around them either, but I do respect them. I think they're very cool animals. So this piece is also really one of my favorite paintings, partially because I love tigers, but also because I just had this idea of wanting to paint two endangered animals that would never be around one another. You would never see, I don't even think these animals are from the same area, but even if they were, I feel like very rarely would you see, three butterflies resting on a tiger. But I wanted to kind of hint at this idea of how animals around the globe, even though they're from different areas, are all being impacted by the same thing. And when we go over to, I have a really big bird painting, or 3 paintings put together. I went further into this idea, and this was kind of what started this idea of realizing that, there are these similarities in animals that they might seem like there's no similarities between a butterfly and a tiger, but they do share the same sort of pressure that's being put on them by humans. And also just seeing the blues and the oranges against one another, those complementary colors really tend to contrast and make each other pop out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I actually had a really, really hard time figuring out how to paint those butterfly wings and get that blue right. Because if you ever look up a blue morpho butterfly, they're like luminescent. I mean, it's such a glossy color. It took me a very, very long time to figure out how to make that shiny.
Wow. Successful, though. Successful. And it's the same color as the tiger's eyes.
I had to do that. I couldn't resist.
This also makes me think about the idea of the lion laying down with the lamb.
Yeah,
in terms of the different things that you would normally see together.
Absolutely, yeah. It has that same sort of aura about it.
Mm-hmm.
And weird shape. They're both shape strange. One's a circle, one's a triangle. I didn't even think about that. I'm so glad you just said that. That was unintentional.
Flipped wings.
This is the painting I was just talking about. I had no idea it would be next. This is perfect. This is probably the most, I don't think I've ever spent this much time on a series or kind of one painting, even though it's 3 separate paintings. It's really a triptych, so they're supposed to go together. And on the left side, all those animals are endangered and they're from North America. In the middle, they're all endangered and they are from Madagascar. And then on the right side, they're all endangered and they're from New Zealand. And I wanted to mess around with this idea of, like I said earlier, of showing that even though these animals are in entirely different parts of the continent, they're vastly different ecosystems and the biodiversity is completely different. They all are intertwined in this same idea that they're all being put under pressure by humans and by the climate changing and things like that. Yeah. And really, I wanted to, play out that idea of everything is connected. Even though they might seem far away, at the end of the day, all of these ecosystems are connected together. And also, if you just take it at face value, really wanting to mess around with the beauty of different areas. So I had a lot of fun working on this. I started on the left one with no intentions of doing the other 2. And I got all the way to, I started to paint some of the base layers and I kind of realized, it would be really cool if I bought 2 more canvases that size and kind of put them together.
Yes.
But yeah, I spent a lot of time on those pieces.
I can imagine there's so much detail.
Yeah.
And my mother is obsessed with those paintings. She won't let go of them. So.
Wow. Well, maybe it'll be her Mother's Day gift. This.
Uh-huh. Exactly. Exactly.
You know?
I might spread them out over 3 holidays. So that will
Okay. They're beautiful, beautiful. And these are as well oil.
Yes. Yes, these are all oil. Anytime that I want to go into detail and I want to fully render something, I always want to go with oil because I just love the ability to come back hours later and still be able to change something or blend it.
Right.
And I feel like the colors are so much more vibrant. I mean, I've seen a lot of artists do some really, really cool things with acrylic paint, but in my personal body of work, I really feel like I never can do the things with acrylic paint traditionally like I can with oil. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's very successful, I think. This bird at the far right top,
Mm-hmm.
is that a hawk?
So that is an incredibly interesting bird. It's called a Kea, K-E-A, and it is the world's only alpine parrot. And what that means is it's the world's only parrot that lives in sort of a mountainous area.
Wow.
And this bird is incredibly intelligent, and it is known around the entire country of New Zealand for flying down onto people's cars and picking at the cars and taking up like the rubber trimming in between the doors. For some reason, and you can look up pictures of this if you Google, Kea. You might need to type in New Zealand Kea car or something. I don't know, but they are known for like pestering with tourist cars, and they're very intelligent animals. Yeah, you can see right there, destroying cars, which I think is hilarious. I think it's so funny, and I thought that. When I saw a picture of its wing out and I saw those colors underneath the wing, I really, really wanted to paint it because it's got such a unique contrast in between those sort of like low saturated colors on the outside and then really fully saturated colors on the inside of the wing.
Maybe it just doesn't like the car exhaust is coming out of the cars. Maybe.
Yeah.
maybe they know something that the cars do. Look at this one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're known for that.
This is the funniest one here.
And if you look up on that same painting, man, that is a beautiful bird right there. On that same painting in the bottom, there's another bird called a kakapo, K-A-K-A-P-O, that lime green one. And that also is a very interesting bird. It's the world's only flightless parrot. And it's crazy that these two parrots live on the same island.
Wow.
And the kakapo is highly endangered. I think the species population is like less than 200 or something.
Oh, dear.
They are like really, really working to bring them out of being in such a dire situation because they're such a unique bird.
You said the same painting at the bottom?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
And they can't fly. They just, at least not for any sort of long distance. But there's a video where they're doing a documentary on them, and obviously, we can't watch it right now. But if you get a chance, y'all should go watch it because the kakapo literally jumps on the reporter's head and just starts flapping its wings down on both sides of the guy's face.
Wow. How do you spell it?
K-A-K-A, right there. If you just scroll down, it's the first selection. Right
Is
there.
a kakapo the same as a cockapoo? It's just a different pronunciation? Or is there also a cockapoo bird?
It might be. I don't know. I know there's a cockatoo with a T, which is.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That's
cockatoo.
A different bird. But this kakapo, he's just so cute.
Wow.
Definitely, this bird was probably the main reason I chose New Zealand because I just wanted to paint this bird. I love them so much.
It's a big bird. Look at it.
Yeah, they're very large. I think it might be the world's largest parrot too.
Wow, that is huge.
It looks as big as a little dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow. And here are the blue ones.
What's really sad about them is one of the main reasons they're endangered right now is because of introduced predators on the island. So things like cats and even rats. they have no natural defense against, because they never really had to encounter them until over the past 50 years. Those have been brought on the island, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And when an animal has no natural defense against a predator, it has no natural defense, and there's nothing it can do about it. And so another really weird thing about this is the only time they can reproduce, and this is so strange, the only time they can reproduce is once every couple years when a certain fruit is blooming or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details, but I remember part of the reason why they can't, their population can't thrive in terms of numbers is because they have such a strange reproduction cycle, which is kind of sad.
So if that fruit or that tree gets chopped down, then they're not going to do anything then.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you might not realize it, but everything is involved.
Yes.
Everything is connected in one way or the other, even if it's very distant.
Yes. Wow. All right. Let's get back to your cockatoo here. All right. Yeah, we could spend a lot on just this one painting. This little one in the center with the long beak.
Uh-huh.
Who is that?
Just about every bird in that painting, I don't know if I remember the name of, because I remember those birds are so, there's so many different birds in Madagascar, that middle panel, that are just incredibly unique. I'm trying to remember, I think it had like ibis in its name, or
it definitely has that sort of a beak, the ibis. Yeah.
The left panel looks like there's a woodpecker there.
Yes, there is. There's an ivory-billed woodpecker, and that animal is actually debatably extinct. There hasn't been a sighting of that animal in a very, very long time.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a great study, just the painting by itself. It's good that you're able to research these. I would definitely suggest that you keep like a little log of your work, so that, like if you ever publish a book about your paintings and your work, you could, sort of give a narrative about each section of the piece, and
Definitely.
And it would be a great book for schools to take, to share with their students.
Yeah. When I showed these paintings in public, this was at a show in Charlotte, I had printed off, I typed out kind of like a page-long description for anybody that wanted to read it, and I framed it beside it.
Right.
But I do not remember any of that information. I should, but I really don't. It's crazy how time flies, because even though I feel like I just finished painting those, it was really probably over a year ago that I finished painting.
Well, just going forward,
Yeah.
Just even if you keep it on a Excel sheet, picture of the bird, where it's from, just your own, you know what I mean? Just sort of keep your own records.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea.
For later reference. Because again, this is the kind of thing you want to pass on to other audiences, not just artists, but also to educators,
Yeah, definitely. So this Red Lobster is the first acrylic paint pour that I ever did, or I should say, I like to call them illustrated paint pours, because like I said earlier, it's a little different than a regular paint pour with the hot glue gun. And so this was the first night that I had this idea, and I'd worked around for months trying to figure out a way to separate my paint pours. And what I was doing at the time before this is I was using modeling paste. It's like really, really thick acrylic paint kind of.
Right.
And I was just building it up with a palette knife, and it was taking forever. And I had almost a light bulb moment where I just realized, why don't I just get a hot glue gun and just go over my drawing? And I did that on this, and it worked out beautifully. It worked out exactly like I wanted it to. And it does such a good job of keeping the paint pores separate. And then when you put a layer of glossy varnish on top of it, it really allows all those colors to kind of pop back through.
So those ridges in the background are the hot glue?
So if you see the black lines on the lobster that almost looks like
Yes.
Sharpie, that's the hot glue. That's what keeps the blue outside the shell and the orangish colors inside the shell. Because when I flip that little cup over, or when I decide to just pour the paint in the area, it spreads out, it makes the cool designs, and it stops right where that hot glue is, because that's sort of a 3D barrier. So it works two ways. It's an outline, it gives it that texture, but it also serves a very utility sort of purpose of creating that barrier that separates those two different areas.
So the hot glue is really to define the image
Yes,
that
exactly.
you have on the background. Okay.
Yeah. And I learned after this lobster to paint the hot glue lines before I pour the paint in, because what I did on this lobster is, hot glue is kind of clear. And I just went ahead and poured the paint because I was so excited. And then I had to go back in and I had to very carefully paint with a thin brush those black hot glue lines, because otherwise you could see straight through it to the canvas, which just didn't look good. So
Right.
I learned a lot on this painting.
Well, but it's good that you just go forth and do what you need to do, and you just learn.
Yeah.
And right. So, I mean, that's just great. So you're not afraid to take risks and chances and learn from any mistakes, or you learn to make it a little quicker or easier for yourself, but still have the same better, even result.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
I think that's the best way to learn, is to just mess up.
Yeah, for sure. Because if somebody just tells you something and you don't do it yourself and feel the truth of it, it's not really your knowledge anymore. It's just somebody else's. But if you make it your own, then it's yours forever. And you can share it with others and show them how to do it. Beautiful, beautiful. Uh-oh, Mr. Shark.
Mr. Shark. So this was another piece that I did for work. When I had done, I can't remember which one I did first, but I did some watercolor and pen and ink together, and the kids really liked it. My bosses really liked it, so they wanted me to keep doing more of it. And so I kept grabbing photos, and I kept wanting to just mess around with that process, like I said earlier, of drawing my image, adding watercolor over everything, and then trying to build back up from that base to make the animal kind of pop out. And I've always loved hatching those sort of parallel lines in the background. I could fill up a whole page of just those hatch lines, and it's like therapy for me.
Right.
And I don't know why, but I wanted to make the shark look smooth. So I tried to add lines to the background and not to the shark, to kind of make him have that sort of smooth shark surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved sharks. I think they have such a bad rap. I was actually talking with my family about this the other night. We have some pretty strange family discussions, and this particular one was talking about the list of animals that kill humans. And sharks kill on average about 4 humans around the world per year. And a statistic that I think is crazy is that more humans die by vending machines per year falling on them than sharks kill people.
Wow.
So I think it's really crazy that sharks have this sort of terrifying image when they're not out to get us. If anything, humans are the ones that are hurting the shark population. I mean, there's hundreds of sharks that are being killed just for fin soup, where they'll literally just catch a shark, they'll cut off its fins, and then they'll throw it back in the water, and it'll drown because it can't move water through its gills because it doesn't have fins.
Right.
Just to get, soup so people can eat it. So, I think that this was actually something that I was passionate about before I started taking art seriously. I told you that I went to UNC Charlotte to study biology. My plan was to eventually go to UNCW, Wilmington, which is closer to the coast, and study marine biology because they have a really great marine biology program. And I wanted to become a marine biologist. And that path didn't work out for me, but I found out that on the artistic path, I could still create work that was raising awareness for marine biology related things. So
Nice. Well, you could definitely still work with marine biologists and collaborate with them.
Yeah.
Artists and scientists have for a long time worked together. It's not very, it's not very advertised, right? But it's there, you know, it's
Definitely.
there. Some of the biggest companies, including Apple, they have artists work with some of their researchers and scientists. So that's just a little plug in your ear. Yeah. But it's beautiful. Okay, now let's go to your drawings.
So these drawings, this series of 8 pen and ink drawings, are the first pieces I ever did about endangered animals. This was a body of work that I did my junior year in college. And prior to this point, when I had gotten into the art program, I was really thinking heavily in my mind comic book artists, because I grew up reading comic books. I always loved drawing superheroes. But I figured out really quickly that it just wasn't a market that I wanted to get into. I had felt like at the time I wasn't good enough, and the artists that I did know that were good enough were working very, very hard for a type of artwork that I feel like isn't appreciated like it deserves to be appreciated. But when I started to draw animals, I still wanted to cling on to that sort of very comic book illustrated style of black and white hatch marks. And the size of paper I chose was 11 by 17, because that's a very common size for comic book artwork. And it's not a very common art size for anything else. And so I wanted to do a series of 8 pieces from different environments around the world, where there would be 3 species from every environment that's endangered, and they would be in their environment, in the environment being shown how it was being damaged. And if you notice, in every piece, there's colored areas, and the colored areas are things that humans have done to impact that environment. So the trees are brown because they've been chopped down. And there's also a circular element in each piece. And the circular element is sort of a glimpse into the urban environment, or the human element that has made this environment look the way it is.
I see.
It actually, this all started from littering. I would walk around the university area and I would see cigarette butts everywhere, and it would absolutely drive me insane. Not that I have, if you want to smoke, go smoke, but just seeing people smoke a cigarette and then just throw the butt down wherever they wanted to me was so indicative of a larger idea that humans have had, that I feel like a lot of people think, well, because there's so much litter, why does it matter if I throw one more thing out? When really that mentality is something that has put us in the position we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular piece deals with something a little different. Every piece actually has a little bit of a different message behind it. This has to do with something called consumerism, which is basically the idea of humans existing on the planet just to consume, sort of. That's not exactly what it means, but I thought it was so interesting that the mascot, or the symbol for Coca-Cola, is this polar bear, which is an animal that its environment is literally melting on a daily basis. And it is becoming stranded, they're starving. And meanwhile, we have one of the largest companies on the planet, which Coke was actually just listed in 2020 for the 2nd year in a row to be the largest polluter, the largest big brand name polluter on the planet. So, we have
is the company the polluters, or you mean the consumers are the polluters?
Well, so the big problem is, it's both, but both are guilty. But the big problem is Coca-Cola refuses to make anything with one-time plastic usage. Even though what they make can be recycled, they refuse to create water bottles out of plastic that is not plastic, out of materials that are biodegradable, basically. Because, and from a capitalistic perspective, they would lose a lot of money. It's very efficient using plastic. Plastic is really an amazing thing that humans created, but just like anything else, it has the capacity to be overdone, and it has been overdone. And Coke is not making that change. So both parties are at fault. Yes, humans are definitely not doing a good job of, drinking a Coke and then putting it in the correct receptacle. But also from the creator's perspective, it's well within their abilities to create containers that are more eco-friendly for the environment. So yeah, that's a good question. And to answer your question, it's really on both parties. But like I said, I just thought it was crazy that this company that is polluting the environment is using an endangered animal as their mascot. And to me, something about that just felt so wrong. That's what I wanted to make that piece about. Even though, honestly, I'm guilty too, because I love drinking Coke. So my activism only goes so far.
But I'm sure you put your bottle in the correct receptacle, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And here we have, I think this is the third panda in the show. I love drawing pandas. And this actually only has 2 species of animals, but it has 1 endangered species of tree. And that's I'm probably going to say this wrong. It's called like a ginkgo biloba tree.
Yes.
And it's a very old, very significant tree that is not doing well now, partially because of deforestation. I'm sure there's other reasons. But also the 2 animal species I think are so interesting to be juxtaposed together because, like we talked about earlier, you have the panda, which is this icon for sort of the positive idea of conservation, where humans have brought it out of being endangered. But then in the background on the tree, you have a red panda, which is a much less well-known type of mammal. It's actually not related to the panda. It's closer related to a raccoon, but it's called a red panda. But they are, I think, close to critically endangered, and they are not doing well. And so I think that you have this interesting kind of teeter-totter idea of, giving attention to certain species and neglecting other species. And at the end of the day, really the problem is just humans' daily actions not being as considerate as they could be. And again, I'm part of the problem here too. I'm sure there's things I do on a daily basis that I don't even think are affecting the environment in the way that they are, but it's important that we are at least trying. And if you look at the rapid deforestation and can't think of the word of it, but basically how quickly buildings have been built, not just in China, this is based in China, but in any area around the globe, it's with almost just a complete lack of respect to the environment around it, which is sad, but that's really what I was kind of touching on.
And you have the dollar bills currency coming out of the tree.
Yeah, I wanted to make the leaves start turning. There's actually a few Doritos. I don't know if you can see those orange.
I could see the red triangles.
I was going for Doritos. There's some chopsticks and a fishing rod.
Wow.
So every piece has litter in it. That is one common element. Even though some of the pieces are more about littering than others, every piece is at least to a small extent about littering. And this is about oil spills. It's really just about the mistreatment of marine environments.
Yes.
Where if you look on the back of the manatee, you see those propeller marks, because you see this all the time on manatees and whales, where boats will just go right over them and scrape up their back and sometimes kill them. And then there's a lawn chair. I really just wanted to draw a lawn chair. But the human element in this is an oil spill. And so again, I had this idea of small areas being full color. And when I saw an oil spill, and I don't think I did the best job of this, I probably could have spent more time on that area. But when you look at an oil spill, sometimes the way it refracts on the water, it has these beautiful rainbow colors on it. Yes. And that's such a negative element in any marine ecosystem. Whenever oil gets spilled, there's really no way to clean it up effectively. And it kills so many animals. I'm sure you've seen the videos of people trying to use Dawn to get the oil out of the seabirds and any sort of sea mammal. And this is the one that started it. This is the very first one I started drawing, and you'll see a lot of cigarette butts around the ground. And then you got the plastic bottles and the plastic straws in the background as well. And there's actually an endangered plant in this one too. It's that rose. I think it's called a middle mist red. I might have messed that name up, but the rose that I'm thinking of, I think there's like two of them left on the planet, like 2 roses. Wow. And they're in some lab in Europe or something, and they're like very carefully taken care of. But again, I just noticed as I was working on this that I'm very heavily focusing on animals when plants are just as important.
Yes.
And then you have the human element is someone smoking a cigarette in the background. Which again, I wasn't trying to take a shot at people smoking cigarettes, even though it's unhealthy. It's really more just talking about how you discard of the cigarette when you're done.
Right.
And we were talking earlier about iguanas. This is the marine iguana that's endangered in the Galapagos Island. And the main idea of this piece is something called, I can't think of the name of it in a negative context, but ecotourism is the name of it in more of a general positive context. But part of the reason that the Galapagos Islands species aren't doing well is because it's being treated more as a tourist site and less of a conservational habitat, sort of. I don't know if that's the right terminology for it. But you have a lot of byproducts of humans coming in and out that aren't really good for the environment just because people want to see it. Right. And it's ironic to me because part of the reason that the Galapagos Islands popular is because of Charles Darwin and this idea of, analyzing how animals came to be the way they are, which is really, at the end of the day, in my opinion, a respect for animals. And, they were trying to observe them. And now here we are, that's evolved to a certain point where it's affecting the island in a bad way. So,
ironic, right?
It's very ironic, yeah. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with those pieces. That was a very interesting project. It makes me want to get back into pen and ink more.
Did we cover all of the pieces? I think
that might be all of them.
Because I'm looking through and we did that wall.
Oh, those ones. We didn't do the big tigers. I don't want to do.
Let's do these. Yeah, this is another.
Edge of Infinity. This painting is actually, unfortunately, in this shot, unfinished, and I still haven't fully finished it, and I hate that because I wanted to, I wanted to have it finished for the show, but it's so big and it's so full of detail that it takes forever. It's taking me so much time. But
so far so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is piece number 1 of what I believe is going to be a 3-part series. I started the second one. It's going to be a whale shark. And I haven't decided what the animal is going to be in the third one, but what this piece is about is the relationship between the individual animal in contrast against the idea of the infinite cosmos, basically. So I'm trying to use this idea of water and space as being these vast concepts that are so big to emphasize how alone and how low the population is for these endangered animals. And you can kind of see that in the whale shark, which obviously I don't have that photo here, but the whale shark is the only animal that's in the ocean in that scene. And it just seems very vast and alone, basically.
Wow.
Who's the king? This is actually a collaborative painting. I did not paint all of this. This was with a classmate of mine. Her name is Marlene De Silva, and she goes by Milo on her Instagram and just in person. That's what she likes to be called. But we wanted to paint something together, and we just sat around for a long time trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And we knew we wanted to do a lion, but eventually we came around to the idea of wanting to have this battle. And what I loved about this is it's not like she painted the lion and I painted the crocodile. We kind of flip-flopped. So we would both draw them for about 30 minutes and then we'd switch and we'd, draw the other one. And then when we started painting, we did the same thing. So for about 30 minutes, we'd work on an animal and then we'd flip-flop and go back and forth. And I think it was cool because it allowed both of our styles to kind of cohesively go in the same painting together. And you really probably can't tell that it is 2 different people because we cycled around the painting so much.
Right. Very well. I like the fact that the lion's tongue is purple.
Yeah.
Great.
We actually argued the whole time who we thought would win. She thought the lion would win. I think the crocodile would probably win, but who knows?
It's something to look at, and their claws and their fangs. Everybody's got blood.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting.
So this is my favorite paint pour. I absolutely loved working on this piece. It was also it was my largest paint pour before I did the giraffe that we started on. And in case you couldn't tell from this show, I love painting tigers. I love everything about tigers. I think they're so majestic, and to me, I think they are the icon for conservation, because you're dealing with an animal that is beautiful, you know, it needs to be respected, but it's also alone. You don't really see tigers in packs ever. They're always lone hunters, with the exception of when it's, you know, like breeding season. But
To do a Black Panther. I saw a Black Panther in South Africa, and they're loners too,
yeah,
and
definitely.
you don't see them very often.
And Black Panthers are cool because they're such a cool example of the same animal that has micro evolved in different parts of the area. So a Black Panther, a Puma, I think a Black Panther and a jaguar are the same animal as well. It's just different areas, and they have different coats because of the environment that they live in and that they've adapted to. So to me, it's so cool to see an animal like that. You know, you have the jaguar and the Black Panther and the Puma, and I think there's actually another variety in a different area, and they're all essentially the same exact animal. They've just grown slight different changes over, you know, generations, because that's
Is a Puma the white one?
Yeah, the Puma is the North American one. That's sort of a tannish color. Yeah. But this piece, again, this was that hot glue method where I drew everything out, and then I used the hot glue lines to keep them separate, and I just drizzled the paint basically very carefully, and I had a lot of fun with it. I actually messed up a couple times when I was working on this. I made the mistake of trying to do the highlights and shadows in oil paint on top of acrylic paint, which normally that's okay. You can do that. But then I made a mistake of using a varnish on top of all that wasn't meant for oil paint. And so if you notice, you probably can't notice, but the whiskers and all the highlights are actually sort of a yellowish color. They're not really white like I wanted them to be. And that's because the varnish I used. But it ended up not really being that big of a deal. You know, unless I say that, people don't really know. But
Beautiful piece. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. All right. I think that one was the last one on that wall. Let's come out and see if there's any other.
I love this layout. This is so cool. I wish I could actually have my work shown in a physical gallery like this.
I know.
This is beautiful.
I want to see the opposite wall to this one. See if we.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we went through those pieces either.
Aha. Okay. Yeah. See, I know this. Let's start here. At least let's look at them.
Yeah.
And if there's anything you want to say, the African wild dog.
Another animal that's suffering right now a lot. They're, I think, critically endangered.
Wow.
That gecko is actually my pet gecko at the time. I had a crested gecko that I really liked, so I wanted to paint him. And all these past three pieces you just went through, this one included, are all a part of that pen and ink and watercolor series, where I was combining those two mediums together. And that was during the Australian wildfires, so that's why the background is the way it is.
Oh, wow.
This piece was actually, I got commissioned to draw this piece. And then when I finished it, the guy ghosted me and dropped off the face of the earth.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the only time that's ever happened to me. Because I don't like to take money up front. I know that's a very odd thing. Most artists, I feel like, do take money up front. But to me, I feel like it motivates me to finish the painting and then get paid.
At least partly, you know, you get like your initial, just the initial. I mean, that's a good, a good balance
of why you do that, because this happened. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I enjoyed the piece. This actually was the start of a series where I did insects that aren't often looked at as, you know, pretty insects or beautiful insects. And I wanted to juxtapose them against skulls of larger animals. So there was a praying mantis with an eagle skull that I did. And then there was a giant centipede with a jaguar skull that I did.
Okay. Now, why the cycle? Talk about that, the cycle.
Because I wanted to show this idea that, and this isn't the best example of it, but all the time in nature, you see these examples of when an animal dies, it helps the environment in so many other ways. And you have all these other animals that are now part of that animal in a way. It's almost, this is kind of a cheesy example, but in The Lion King, you know, when Mufasa and Simba are talking, they're talking about the circle of life.
Right.
And this idea that just because something is dead doesn't mean that it's no longer useless. It still serves its purpose, debatably to an even greater degree than it did when it was alive. So that's sort of that idea. This tarantula has made his home on the skull. Hungry panda. That's another pen and ink piece.
Oh, beautiful. I love the colors. This also is one of my favorites because I love little fuzzy. Fuzzy.
Doc's adorable. I saw that picture and I knew I had to paint it.
It is so cute.
He's a cutie.
And it's a different iguana.
Yes.
Or this is a chameleon.
That's a chameleon. So you see those speckled designs in the background?
Yes.
That's what happens when you spread salt on wet watercolor. It creates those designs.
Okay.
And just like the paint pours, I have no control over what it looks like, which is something that I need because I like being in, you know, so much control that a lot of times it ends up being a bad thing. And to have that abstract, you know, little tidbit kind of sprinkled in there, it ends up giving my piece a nice little factor or a facet about it that I wouldn't be able to do on my own. So
it's a good balance, I think, to have more abstract and your representation. It's a fine balance.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And this one you did the outline in the glue, right?
Yep. Oh no, not glue. No, I didn't use glue on this one. This is such a small painting.
Okay.
That, I wouldn't have been able to do it. It does look like that though.
Okay.
That's just an ink pen that I used.
Okay, that one's the last one, it looks like.
That would be cool to do a chameleon with a paint pour though. I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I think all of them just, we had so much fun. We had great. I think we did this wall. Let's make sure we did this wall here. Yes, we did, right? Yeah, that was the last one. We did that wall. Yeah, we're done. That was it. We covered all the works.
Perfect. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so
Well,
much.
it was very interesting work, Noah, and you're going to have to start saving up to travel around the world so you can see these animals in their natural habitat.
Yes. And one, for the experience. I mean, that sounds incredible. But two, also to be able to work off my own photographic reference would be really, really nice because I don't like having to ask people permission. Just because it's annoying. It's another step in the process. I do it because it's the right thing to do. But
what I would suggest is that could be something that you could do a crowdfunding for, and you can say that those who, you know, chip in $25, they can get a postcard from this country of this, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Those who donate $500, they can get a G-clay, a hand, or whatever, you know, like the pieces that you have here, they're not totally expensive, you know, so you could say you can have a painting and you can do different versions of the same image. You could take, like, say you're seeing one of the iguanas, you could take different angles and, you know, so
yeah, absolutely.
I think people would be who are, and then you could market it to conservationists. You could, you know, clubs that are interested in certain type animals. You know, I think that's one way. Even if you just say you need $5,000, you know, something like that, just so you could take the trip and take the photos just over a school holiday or something. You know?
Absolutely.
You know, just a little idea.
That's a great idea. No, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Noah, would you like to share one word of wisdom you'd like to give to the attendees and also to the people who will be viewing the recording of this? Oh, and Henry, you're on. Would you like to say anything?
Hello, Henry. Nice meeting you.
Henry,
he just
he doesn't have his mic on.
Oh, I'll click for him to unmute if he wants to. I think he was trying to say something. Maybe he doesn't. Okay, so.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, y'all try to forgive me. This is my first time using the Zoom.
That's fine.
My very first time. And I'm just surprised. I just plugged it in and it came up. I said, ooh, all of this just to plug it in. But I'd like to ask you, have you ever considered making prints?
I do make prints. You know, I have yet to find a place in Charlotte that I really like making prints for an affordable price. When I first got into art, I was doing nothing but selling prints. I had a really hard time selling originals, and it sort of started to transition where I was fortunate enough. I was very blessed to have opportunities to sell originals, and that kind of pushed me away from selling prints. Just because it's a lot of work to create prints and you just don't get the same money that you do from selling the original. But I do make prints and I do sell prints. I just don't advertise it as much as I should. But yeah, definitely. I need to find a place that makes high quality prints, because right now, I know this is the biggest slap in the face of any artist that hears this, but I've been going to just Office Depot because it's such a quick turnaround and they're so cheap, but it's not the highest quality print. Anything bigger than 11 by 14, they just can't do it. Right. So I need to find a place in Charlotte that's a quicker turnaround time that creates some high quality prints, definitely.
That's Charlotte, North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, I have your information. I have some friends in Charlotte, and I'll contact you if I get any.
Please do. I would love that. Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
Right, Noah. Do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to give your fellow artists that you've? I mean, I know you picked up some, and not necessarily regarding process, right? But just philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So I don't know how much wisdom I have. I'm still learning. I don't want to come across as some master when I'm not, but I would say find what you're passionate about and just work on it every day. I mean, that's it. You know, I think one of the things about being an artist that intimidates so many people is that it's honestly simple. It's just not easy. I mean, the idea is simple. Just like any other task in life, anything you want to get good at, you just need to do it every single day. Whether that's for 30 minutes or for 3 hours, it doesn't matter. As long as you're putting in practice and you're doing something you're passionate about, eventually it's going to come back around to help you and to kind of grow your potential. So I would say, you know, that's all it is. I'm still nowhere near where I want to be as an artist, but it's not about where you are. It's about whether or not you're improving. So. Yes.
Well, thank you. That was excellent words of wisdom.
Thank you very much.
That's right. You know, even though we all know this, it's so good to hear it over and over again, right? Right, guys? You know, so, and this year I'll be 60 years old and I'm so excited. One of the things that I do every day in the mornings for 10 minutes, I'll exercise. Mm-hmm. At night before I go to bed, I'll exercise for 5 minutes. And I've been doing that for years. So now my body is feeling good. I don't feel aged. I don't feel like, oh, I'm old and decrepit. And I would say that if I even increase my exercise, like lifting more weights or something, right? I've seen ladies in their 80s looking like the female version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. You know?
Well, I just celebrated 83 last week.
Wow.
Oh, congratulations.
Happy belated birthday, Helen. Oh my God.
Thank you.
And you're looking good too. Yes. So really it's practice what we really care about every day. Yeah. And that includes our body, because our body is the vessel which through which we create our art. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely, thank you so much, Noah, for your artistry, for showing us what you're doing. And also, I wanted to mention that part of the proceeds from any sales that you have in this exhibition, we are donating to conservation charities. So, and I'm saying this not just for the attendees here, but for those who listen to this after the recording gets published. So please support Noah, support his art, and in doing so, you'll be supporting the contribution towards conserving and helping some of these animals to stay here on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. This is my personal mission, to always help artists to be promoted, to get a chance to show that what they're doing, that they're doing meaningful work and beautiful work at that, right? So again, Noah, thank you so much. Each of us, we have our own viewpoint in the world, and you're showing us yours. So thank you for that courage, because it does take a bit of courage to show what you're doing to the public, right? You could hide it under your bed, you could just show it to a few friends, but instead you choose to really get out there and to show as many people as possible. So I'm here to support you. I'm here to support the other artists, those on the call, those listening to the call. Please, if you have any ideas for shows, or you have an idea for a solo exhibition, send it over. And again, support Noah's work, because supporting him, it's actually supporting all the lovely animals that are endangered, and some who are not. Right. All right.
It was an interesting presentation, Noah. Thank you. And it was a great show, Carolyn.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
being here. Thank you. Thank
No,
you.
I appreciated it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Henry, for being one of the attendees. Thanks for hanging out till the end. We started out with about, I think it was 10 people who actually showed up, and now we have 4, but that's okay, we're here, right? So let me stop sharing my, so now we can all see each other at once, right? There we are.
Well, Henry, now you know how to do Zoom.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a lot more complicated. Well, this wasn't complicated at all. It's just a simple matter of plugging it into the computer.
Right.
They do a
And
good
I
job.
got voice and everything. I can talk and.
You know, I tried to sign. I have a Zoom account, but I can't figure out how to make an appointment. So that's my next thing. I don't know how to be the host.
Oh,
I've
you
been
know what?
trying to do this with my cousin.
Oh, all you have to do is go to YouTube or Google. You see how every time we had a question, what did I do? I just clicked Google and asked it. So Google owns YouTube. So it will give you the videos and it'll give you the text.
Oh, good idea.
So
Thank
all you have to do, anything that you have a question about, just Google it or YouTube it, right?
Okay. Well, have a good afternoon.
All right. Thanks again. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.